8 hours. That's how long I calculated before the incoming tide would rise above my head. I was stuck up to my neck in quicksand, with no one coming to help. Every minute that passed, I sank a little deeper into my sandy grave.
Help me!
Hello, today I'm going to tell you about the most helpless 8 hours of my life. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 28 years old and I work as a marine biologist on the Oregon coast. For the past 6 years, I've been researching the Pacific coastline's tidal pools, documenting marine life. Tidal flats, salt marshes, estuaries, these are my laboratory. But that day, the routine research I conducted in the tidal flats near Manzanita Beach almost became my last research. Everything started on the morning of October 23rd. It was a typical autumn day on the Oregon coast. Weather was foggy, temperature 46 degrees Fahrenheit, light wind. Low tide was going to be exactly at 6 a.m., which meant perfect time to examine the wide tidal flats. At 5:30 a.m., I had gone down to the shore with my field equipment. Tidal flat research requires very careful planning. You have to know the tide timing because when the tide turns, wide areas quickly become submerged. That morning, low tide would last 6 hours. Then the tide would start rising. My equipment included waterproof boots, field notebook, sampling containers, GPS, emergency whistle, and tidal chart. When working on the coast, I always tell someone where I'm going. But that day, fatal mistake. Because I was in a hurry, I hadn't given my supervisor the exact location. I had only said, "I'll be working at Manzanita Flats." The first 2 hours went smoothly. I collected various marine life samples, took water quality measurements. At 8 a.m., the tidal waters had reached minimum. This was perfect timing to reach the farthest areas. Normally, I follow established paths. But that morning, I saw an unusual algae formation, about 650 feet away. It had interesting coloration, a perfect fit for my research. I decided to deviate from the main path to examine that algae. This is where I made my first mistake. Walking alone in unknown terrain is very dangerous. Tidal flats look solid from the surface, but the underneath composition can be very unpredictable. While walking toward the algae, I noticed the ground texture was changing. I transitioned from hard, compact sand to a softer, muddy surface. But this seemed normal, typical in tidal areas. After advancing another 150 feet, I felt there was a difference in one of my steps. My foot sank deeper than normal. The sand was wet and sticky. But I wasn't concerned. Muddy areas are common in tidal flats. In my next step, my left foot sank knee-deep. This was alarming. I tried to pull back, but my foot was stuck. And at that moment, I realized I had been caught in quicksand. Quicksand is actually a mixture of sand and water in a specific density ratio. It's denser than normal sand, but lighter than water. The human body is denser than quicksand, so it sinks. But there's a huge difference between theory and practice. The first instinct was struggling. I pulled hard to get free. This was the biggest mistake. The more you struggle in quicksand, the faster you sink. The physics are cruel. Movement disturbs the particle structure, liquefies the mixture, creates suction. After 30 seconds of struggling, I had sunk waist deep. Panic was setting in. Heavy breathing, racing heart. But panic is a death sentence in quicksand. I had to stay calm. I took a deep breath and started analyzing the situation. The quicksand's consistency was like thick mud. My legs were completely trapped, movement impossible. But my upper body was still free. I looked at my tidal chart. High tide would start at 2 p.m. 6 hours later. Full high tide would be at 6 p.m. If I couldn't escape by then, the rising water would cover my head. I made a quick calculation. At my current position when the water level rose, it would take 8 hours to reach head level. 8 hours. That was my time to live or die. I started a systematic approach. Instead of panicking, I would use my science background. I knew quicksand physics, viscosity, density, thixotropy properties. I could translate this knowledge to survival. The first strategy was weight distribution. Upright position was the worst case, maximum pressure per square inch. Horizontal position was better, weight spreads over a larger area. Slowly, gently, I tried to get myself horizontal. This was incredibly difficult. Quicksand had a thick paste consistency. Every movement created resistance. But with patience and small movements, I gradually changed my body position. In horizontal position, the sinking rate slowed, but escape was still impossible. My legs were still deeply trapped. The quicksand's grip was very strong, creating a vacuum effect. The second strategy was rhythmic movement. Constant struggling was counterproductive, but small rhythmic motions could disturb the particle structure, liquefy it. I started gently contracting and relaxing my leg muscles. This technique provided slow progress. Inch by inch, I could move my legs slightly upward, but progress was very slow, a few centimeters per hour. At 10 a.m., after 2 hours, I was at chest-deep level. There was progress, but insufficient. At the current rate, completely escaping would take 12 to 15 hours, but I only had 8 hours. At this point, mental state became very important. Panic waves came and went. In desperate moments, I wanted to cry, scream. But these would waste energy, make the situation worse. I started using meditation techniques, controlled breathing, mind focusing. Maintaining this calm state was critical for survival. At 11 a.m., I tried a new strategy. Instead of upward movement, sideways movement. The quicksand might be shallower at the edges. Slowly, carefully, I tried to move in the direction of solid ground. This technique was more effective. At the edges, the quicksand consistency was thinner. I started making gradual progress, but still very slow. Around noon, I reached neck-deep level. This was the most dangerous level. Head movement was restricted, breathing difficult, but at the same time, I was closest to escape. At 12:30 p.m., the critical moment came. The tide was starting to turn. I could hear water sounds in the distance. The rising tide had begun. Now I was racing not just against quicksand, but against incoming water. The arrival of water was a double-edged sword. Positive side, it could dilute the quicksand, soften the consistency. Negative side, drowning risk. At 1 p.m., the first water waves reached my feet. Cold, 39-degree Pacific water. Hypothermia risk began. But at the same time, I felt the quicksand loosening. As the water level rose, it started creating a buoyancy effect. The human body is lighter in water. This could help escape from quicksand. Carefully, I started utilizing water buoyancy. Small floating movements, combined with rhythmic muscle contractions. Slowly, very slowly, upward progress. At 2 p.m., water reached chest level. The quicksand was now a water-sand mixture, much more liquid. Movement became easier, but hypothermia was accelerating. This was a race against time. I had to escape before hypothermia made me lose consciousness. Cold water rapidly drains body heat. At 2:30 p.m., the breakthrough moment happened. I was able to free my legs to knee level. Still trapped, but major progress. The combination of water buoyancy and diluted quicksand was working. At 3 p.m., water was at shoulder level. Hypothermia was an advanced stage. Uncontrollable shivering impaired cognitive function, but my determination remained strong. I gathered my remaining energy for the final push. Powerful, coordinated movements. Maximize water buoyancy, minimize quicksand grip. At 3:30 p.m., my legs were completely free. But I was still in neck-deep water and hypothermic. Swimming was necessary, but muscle coordination was poor. Slowly, carefully, I started swimming towards solid ground. Dog paddle style, the most basic, least energy-consuming. At 4 p.m., I reached shallow water. My feet touched solid ground. I crawled out to shore, completely exhausted, hypothermic, but alive. I immediately took off my wet clothes. Wet clothes accelerate hypothermia. I had emergency blanket and dry clothes in my backpack. My cell phone, fortunately, survived in its waterproof case. I called 911. Paramedics arrived 20 minutes later. At the hospital, I received severe hypothermia treatment. Core body temperature was 89 degrees Fahrenheit, critical level. I stayed in intensive care for 24 hours. During recovery, the doctors were impressed. Surviving 8 hours trapped in quicksand is extraordinary, they said. How did you do it? The survival factors were, first, panic control. Systematic thinking overrode panic. Second, physics knowledge. Knowing quicksand properties helped me develop strategy. Third, patience. Slow, steady progress was better than quick, desperate movements. Fourth, environmental awareness. I utilized tidal timing. Fifth, physical endurance. Being able to withstand 8 hours of physical and mental struggle required fitness. This experience taught me valuable lessons. First lesson, never work alone in remote areas. Always use a partner system. Second lesson, proper communication protocols. Always share exact location. Third lesson, emergency equipment must be comprehensive. Proper gear is a lifesaver. Fourth lesson, don't underestimate environmental hazards. Nature is unpredictable and unforgiving. Fifth lesson, practical application of knowledge. Being able to translate academic background to survival is critical. After this incident, I continued coastal fieldwork, but much more cautiously. I implemented advanced safety protocols. I made the partner system mandatory. Today, I still carry the effects of the quicksand experience. I experience anxiety feelings in muddy areas, but at the same time, I gained incredible confidence. This story demonstrates that human resilience is amazing. Being trapped in a helpless situation for 8 hours and escaping with systematic thinking and determination normally seems impossible. With the right knowledge, calm approach, and never give up attitude, you can get out of seemingly hopeless situations. My advice to you: if you work in coastal or wetland environments, follow proper safety protocols. Develop hazard recognition. Take emergency preparedness seriously. Thank you for listening to me. If you learned something from this experience, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can share your own outdoor safety experiences in the comments. See you in the next survival story. Stay safe.